I never thought my life would turn into a nightmare hidden behind a perfect smile. My name is Alex Carter, and I thought I was married to the most beautiful woman in the world, Sophie. From the moment we met, Sophie seemed like a dream, charming, intelligent, and full of warmth. Everyone who met her immediately fell in love with her personality, and I was no exception. I felt like the luckiest man alive when she said yes on our wedding day. For the first few months of our marriage, everything was blissful. Sophie was attentive, affectionate, and always seemed genuinely interested in my life. Friends often told me that we were the perfect couple. I had never been happier. We shared dreams, hopes, and countless late-night conversations about our future together. Our home felt like a sanctuary, a place where nothing bad could ever reach us, or so I thought. But as months passed, I started noticing small things, tiny cracks in her otherwise flawless demeanor. It began with subtle lies, almost insignificant ones. Sophie would say she was going out to meet friends, but sometimes I would see her messages light up on her phone from unfamiliar numbers. She would quickly hide them, claiming they were work-related. At first, I trusted her completely. I thought maybe I was overthinking. But deep down, a gnawing suspicion started to grow, whispering that something was not right. I started paying closer attention, not because I wanted to distrust her, but because my instincts told me something was off. The first major red flag appeared one evening when Sophie said she was going to a charity event downtown. I was working late, so I didn't mind. But later, Emma, my best friend, sent me a casual text. "Hey, did Sophie tell you she was at that cafe downtown tonight?" I just ran into her. I froze. How could she be at a cafe when she told me she was at a charity event? My heart sank. I felt a mix of confusion, betrayal, and disbelief. Could it really be happening? Was my Sophie, the woman I trusted more than anyone else, lying to me? The next few days were torturous. I tried to act normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Every phone notification, every whispered conversation, every suspicious glance she gave, made me question the life I thought I knew. I started secretly observing her routine, noticing patterns that didn't make sense. Late nights at work, sudden trips without me, secretive phone calls. The fear of confronting the truth kept me awake at night, yet the need to know was stronger. One evening, I found myself scrolling through her phone while she was asleep on the couch. My hands shook. I had always respected her privacy, but the suspicion had become unbearable. I found a thread of messages with a man named Mark. Flirty, intimate, and clearly more than casual friendship. My stomach turned. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room, but I forced myself to stay calm. Evidence was key. I confided in Emma the next morning. Her eyes widened as I showed her the messages, each one more damning than the last. "Alex," she whispered, "this isn't just a misunderstanding. She's been lying to you for months. You need to be careful." Her words hit me like a punch in the chest. Months of betrayal, and I hadn't even realized it. The pain was indescribable. I loved Sophie more than anything, but the reality of her deception shattered my trust completely. Yet, amidst the heartbreak, a strange clarity emerged. I realized I needed to confront this situation strategically. Anger alone would not give me the justice I deserved. I needed proof, a plan, and patience. Over the next few weeks, Emma helped me gather concrete evidence. We documented messages, tracked her social media interactions, and even discreetly monitored her movements. Every day, I watched the woman I thought I knew grow stranger and more distant. And yet, in public, she remained the perfect wife, smiling, laughing, making friends, charming everyone around her. That smile, once a source of comfort, became a mask of deceit that fueled my determination to reveal the truth. Meanwhile, Sophie continued her double life flawlessly. She had perfected the art of deception, texting Mark during work hours, arranging secret meetings, and keeping me oblivious. She was careful, meticulous, and cunning, but she underestimated the resolve of a man who had been betrayed. I played my part perfectly. Every morning, I kissed her good morning with a smile. Every night, I said, "I love you," with sincerity. All the while, my mind was calculating every move, every opportunity to reveal the truth at the perfect moment. I couldn't let suspicion ruin the plan. Timing was everything. The revelation had to be dramatic, undeniable, and unforgettable. One afternoon, while Sophie was away at work, I sat down with Emma, going over the evidence. "We have enough," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "Everything is here, messages, photos, calls. There's no way she can deny it." Emma nodded, a hint of satisfaction in her eyes. "Now we wait for the perfect moment." Weeks passed. Sophie continued her acts, unaware of the storm building behind her back. Every interaction, every casual smile, every affectionate gesture became part of a larger play I was orchestrating. I maintained my composure, hiding the growing anger and heartbreak, all while preparing the stage for her ultimate exposure. Then, the opportunity arrived. A dinner party at our house, celebrating what everyone thought was a perfect marriage. Friends and family gathered, complimenting Sophie, praising our ideal life. She laughed, mingled, and basked in the admiration, unaware that the night would turn into a revelation she would never forget. As the evening progressed, I subtly guided conversations, making sure key witnesses were present. Emma was my ally, sitting beside me, ready to help execute the final steps. The tension was thick, like a tightly wound spring waiting to snap. Every laugh, every toast, every casual remark felt like the calm before the storm. Finally, the moment came. With all eyes on Sophie, I calmly stood and addressed the room. "Sophie, there's something everyone needs to see," I said, my voice steady, commanding attention. "Something you've been hiding for months." I pulled out my phone and projected the messages and photos with Mark on the big screen in our living room. The room fell silent. Gasps echoed, and the once cheerful atmosphere turned heavy with shock and disbelief. Sophie's face drained of color, her carefully constructed smile crumbling before everyone's eyes. The evidence was undeniable. The messages, the photos, the calls, all proof of her betrayal. I continued, my voice unwavering but filled with controlled emotion. "For months, I believed in you. I trusted you completely. But the truth cannot stay hidden forever. This is the reality of the woman you've been pretending to be." Tears welled in Sophie's eyes, but no excuse could undo the truth. Friends and family looked at her with judgment, their trust in her shattered. I realized that the perfect revenge is not about cruelty. It's about truth. By revealing her deception, I reclaimed my dignity, my integrity, and my peace of mind. That night, as I watched the consequences unfold, I knew this was only the beginning. The months of lies had left scars, not just on me, but on everyone who trusted her. The full extent of her betrayal, and the repercussions yet to come, were still unfolding. And deep inside, I knew I had set the stage for a justice that Sophie would never forget. The night after the dinner party, our home felt eerily quiet. The laughter and chatter from just hours ago had vanished, leaving a heavy silence that pressed against my chest. Sophie sat on the couch, her eyes red and swollen from tears, and for the first time, she looked utterly defeated. I watched her, a mixture of sorrow, anger, and cautious satisfaction swirling inside me. I knew the battle had begun, but the war was far from over. Sophie had always been intelligent, but she was also reckless in her confidence that her secrets would remain hidden. She had underestimated me. The careful, patient husband she had taken for granted had orchestrated a reveal that no one could ignore. And now the reality of her betrayal had set in. The next morning I awoke early. Sophie was still asleep, curled up on the couch, her hair messy, her usual elegance absent. Emma called me quietly from the kitchen. "Alex," she said, "are you ready for what's next? She's going to try to manipulate her way out of this." I nodded, my mind already working ahead. I knew Sophie's next steps. She would try to charm her way back into control, to twist the story, to make herself appear the victim. But I was prepared. The evidence was undeniable, and this time I would not leave anything to chance. As Sophie stirred awake, she looked at me with a pleading expression. "Alex, please, can we talk privately?" Her voice trembled, carefully calibrated to evoke sympathy. I stared at her, my expression calm but cold. "We can talk," I said. "But everything you say will be for everyone's understanding, not just mine." She froze, sensing that her usual tactics would not work. The thought of public humiliation loomed over her like a shadow she could not escape. I decided to let her stew in uncertainty. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is patience. The following days were a delicate dance. Sophie tried to maintain normalcy, pretending as if the dinner party had not happened, smiling at friends, pretending to laugh, but her eyes betrayed her anxiety. Emma and I documented every move, every message, every attempt at deception. It was becoming clear that Sophie was struggling to maintain control. Then came the calls from Mark. I intercepted them carefully, recording every word. Mark's voice was smug and confident, believing Sophie had the upper hand. But I let him speak, knowing that each conversation was building the mountain of evidence that would crush their lies completely. One evening, Sophie confronted me in private. "Alex, please, let's just move past this. I made a mistake. It's over with Mark." Her tone was desperate, but I remained composed. "Sophie," I said slowly, "the mistake was months long, not a single moment, and it's not over until the truth is fully revealed. For everyone who trusted you." Her lips quivered. "You don't understand. I love you. I never wanted anyone else. Mark, it was just nothing." But I could see the flicker of fear in her eyes. She knew her words could no longer erase the damage. Emma suggested a strategic plan. "Alex, we need to escalate carefully. Show her connections, show her manipulation. Let her unravel on her own. She's smart, but arrogance will make her slip." I agreed. Over the next week, we set subtle traps. Messages that only she could explain, meetings that forced her to be seen lying, and situations that highlighted the contradiction between her words and actions. Sophie began to crack. She was constantly on edge, checking her phone, whispering, making excuses for every detail. Friends started noticing inconsistencies. "Sophie, are you sure that's true?" they would ask. Each small slip added weight to the growing realization that her perfect facade was crumbling. Meanwhile, I remained composed, even affectionate at times, to keep her off balance. The calm, controlled exterior made her mistakes stand out even more. Emma and I recorded everything meticulously, preparing for the ultimate confrontation. The moment when Mark would no longer be a secret, and Sophie's manipulation would be exposed in full. Then came the turning point. Sophie arranged a lunch with some mutual friends, attempting to craft a narrative of innocence. She laughed, smiled, and told stories designed to portray herself as misunderstood and falsely accused. But Mark, arrogant and careless, appeared at the same cafe by coincidence, or perhaps fate. Our careful planning had ensured that the moment was captured from multiple angles. Sophie froze when she saw him. Mark, unaware of the full scope of our strategy, greeted her casually, making no attempt to hide the familiarity. My heart pounded as I watched her panic, the cracks in her confidence widening. Emma subtly nudged me, whispering, "Now is the moment. Let's make it public." I stepped forward, addressing everyone present. "Sophie, there's more to this story, and I think everyone deserves to know the full truth." I presented the messages, photos, and recordings. The room went silent. Gasps echoed. Sophie's face turned pale, her hands trembling. She attempted to explain, to fabricate a reason, but every lie fell flat against the mountain of evidence. Mark's expression shifted from confidence to shock as he realized the scope of exposure. Sophie's web of lies had finally collapsed, leaving both of them exposed. Friends who had once admired her now stared in disbelief, their trust shattered. I felt a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief that truth had prevailed, sorrow for the betrayal I had endured. But the story was not yet over. Sophie attempted to flee, leaving the cafe abruptly, but our planning anticipated this. Emma and I had arranged for a discreet but unavoidable encounter later that evening. A small gathering where we would confront her one final time in the presence of close friends and family. The evening arrived. Sophie entered cautiously, her usual confidence stripped away. I stood calmly, Emma at my side. "Sophie," I began, "this is your final chance to tell the truth, with no manipulation. No lies, no excuses." Her lips trembled. "Alex, but the words faltered. The courage to lie convincingly had left her. I revealed the final evidence. Hidden calls, secret meetings, and the full timeline of her deception. The room filled with shock and disbelief. Friends and family listened, some shaking their heads, others whispering in astonishment. Sophie's demeanor collapsed completely. She could not maintain the mask any longer. In that moment, I realized the true power of patience, preparation, and truth. Revenge was not about cruelty. It was about restoring integrity and reclaiming dignity. Sophie had spent months hiding behind lies, but the truth had a way of emerging, undeniable and absolute. By the end of the evening, Sophie sat quietly, defeated. Mark had fled, leaving her to face the consequences alone. Friends and family approached cautiously, some offering support to me, others expressing disappointment toward her. I felt a mix of triumph and sorrow. Triumph that justice had been served, sorrow that love had been so thoroughly betrayed. That night, as I reflected on the events, I knew the journey was far from over. There would be repercussions, legal and personal, that Sophie would have to face. But for the first time in months, I felt a sense of closure. The deception that had haunted me, the lies that had poisoned our marriage, had been fully exposed. And deep inside, I knew that the final chapter, the ultimate reckoning, was yet to come. Sophie's betrayal had set in motion events that neither of us could have anticipated, and the coming days would reveal the full consequences of her actions. The days after the cafe confrontation were tense and heavy with anticipation. Sophie had become a shadow of the woman she once appeared to be. Her usual confidence, charm, and poise were replaced by anxiety, guilt, and fear. Mark had disappeared, leaving her to face the consequences of months of deception alone. Friends and family who had once admired her now kept their distance, wary of her manipulations. I, on the other hand, felt a mixture of relief and clarity. Months of heartbreak, betrayal, and silent observation had culminated in a moment of truth that no one could ignore. Emma stayed by my side, her support unwavering, ensuring that every detail was documented and nothing would escape scrutiny. Sophie tried to approach me one morning, her voice barely above a whisper. "Alex, can we talk? Just us?" she asked, her eyes pleading. I looked at her calmly, my expression unshaken. "We can talk," I said, "but this is not private anymore. The truth is already out, and it will be seen by those who matter." Her face fell. She realized the gravity of the situation. There would be no easy way to manipulate her way back into control. Emma and I had spent the previous week preparing for the final revelation, the ultimate moment when Sophie would have no choice but to face her actions fully. We organized a small gathering of our closest friends and family, creating a setting where honesty would prevail and deception could no longer hide. When Sophie arrived, she looked nervous, adjusting her hair and avoiding eye contact. She tried to smile, but it was strained, hollow. I addressed the group, my voice steady but firm. "Everyone here deserves the truth," I said. "What you've seen so far is only part of the story. Sophie's lies have extended far beyond what we've revealed, and it's time for the complete account." The room went silent. Sophie's hands trembled as she realized she could no longer control the narrative. Emma discreetly handed me a tablet, containing the complete timeline of messages, calls, and meetings with Mark. I displayed it for everyone to see, ensuring every detail was undeniable. Sophie attempted to speak, but her voice faltered. "Alex, it's not what it seems," she began, trying to cast herself as the victim. But the evidence was overwhelming. Each photo, each message, each hidden call reinforced the truth. leaving no room for excuse or manipulation. Friends and family gasped, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others whispering in astonishment. Mark's name came up again, and Sophie's eyes widened. She realized the full exposure was imminent. He had been a hidden element in her deception, and now his involvement was public. She tried to deflect, but it was too late. The weight of her actions pressed down on her, her carefully constructed life of lies crumbling completely. I spoke next, my voice calm yet filled with conviction. Sophie, for months I believed in you. I trusted you completely, but the truth cannot remain hidden. Every lie, every secret, every betrayal has consequences. And now it's time to face them. Her lips quivered, tears streaming down her face. She realized that charm and pleading would no longer work. The network of friends and family around her were witnesses to her betrayal. She could no longer hide behind her beauty, her intelligence, or her charisma. Emma stepped forward, supporting me. Sophie, we've documented everything. There is no room for denial. The deception is complete, and the consequences are inevitable. Sophie's body language shifted, slumping in defeat, realizing that every manipulation had failed. The final reckoning unfolded slowly. Sophie had to explain herself to everyone present. She tried to offer excuses, half-truths, and apologies, but each statement was contradicted by the evidence before their eyes. Every denial, every attempt at justification was dismantled methodically. It became painfully clear that the months of betrayal were intentional, calculated, and deliberate. Mark's absence made it impossible for her to hide any part of the truth. She could no longer claim innocence, and every attempt to manipulate the perception of others failed. Friends and family who had once trusted her looked on with shock, anger, and disappointment. The admiration that once surrounded her had vanished, replaced with disbelief and judgment. I felt a sense of solemn satisfaction. Revenge had never been about cruelty. It was about truth, justice, and reclaiming dignity. Sophie had attempted to control the narrative, but the truth had prevailed, exposing her lies completely. Her perfect smile, once a mask for deceit, had lost its power. In the days following the gathering, Sophie tried to repair her relationships, but the damage was irreversible. She faced the consequences of her actions socially and emotionally, realizing that betrayal leaves scars that cannot be easily healed. Mark remained absent, a ghost in the story of her downfall, and Sophie had to confront her actions alone. Emma and I remained vigilant, ensuring that every detail of the exposure was clear and understood by those who had been affected. It was important that justice was not only done but seen to be done. The months of planning, patience, and observation had reached their ultimate purpose. I reflected on the journey, the pain, the heartbreak, the deception, and realized how much I had grown. Betrayal had tested my resilience, intelligence, and patience. But by facing it with a clear mind and careful planning, I had ensured that the truth could no longer be denied. Sophie, stripped of her manipulations, began to understand the consequences fully. She realized that trust, once broken, is extremely difficult to restore. The relationships she had taken for granted, the admiration she had enjoyed, and the respect she had assumed were all lost. She had underestimated the resolve of a man who had been wronged, and the lessons were irrevocable. In the final moments of the reckoning, I confronted Sophie one last time privately. Sophie, this isn't just about exposing lies, I said. It's about understanding the weight of betrayal and the value of truth. I hope you learn from this, even if it comes at the cost of everything you held dear. She nodded silently, tears flowing, understanding that no words could erase the past. The months of deceit had led to a collapse of the life she had attempted to maintain, and now she faced the full measure of responsibility. Over time, life began to move forward. Relationships with friends and family healed gradually, though the memories of the betrayal remained. Sophie retreated into reflection, realizing the consequences of her choices. Mark disappeared entirely from our lives, and the shadow of his presence became a reminder of the deception that had once thrived. I focused on rebuilding trust, integrity, and peace in my life. The ordeal had been painful, but it had taught me invaluable lessons about patience, observation, and the power of truth. Emma remained a steadfast support, her friendship a pillar during the darkest times. Together, we ensured that justice had been served fully and transparently. The final reckoning was not just about exposing Sophie's lies. It was about reclaiming dignity, restoring truth, and ensuring that betrayal could no longer hide behind a perfect smile. The story of deception had ended, leaving lessons that would endure far longer than the pain it had caused. And as I reflected on the entire journey, I understood one undeniable truth. Betrayal may hide behind charm, beauty, and smiles, but truth always finds its way. The months of patience, planning, and careful observation had ensured that justice prevailed, and I emerged stronger, wiser, and unbroken.